Tom Quee presents The Royle Ramble, an episode-by-episode celebration of the classic British sitcom, The Royle Family. To get in touch with the show, email us at theroyleramblepod@gmail.com. Everyone, it's Tom here, back with another episode of The Royle Ramble, the world's only Royle Family podcast. Hope you're well. Again, sorry slightly for the delay here. This is very intermittent uploads. I actually had the whole thing ready to go yesterday. I mean, I'm recording this in the UK, live in the UK, and it's very, very hot over here at the moment. Had the thing ready to go, went outside, put the laptop in the garden, thought I'd do some, serene sort of on plein air kind of editing, and the thing just overheated, and I basically lost 75% of the edit, so that's really annoying. But, if you listen to this in a few years' time, who cares about that? Anyway, what is this show? This is myself, Tom Quee. Hello, I'm going through every episode of, in my eyes, one of the greatest TV shows ever made, ever written, ever performed, The Royle Family. And today we are tackling the final episode of the first season, which is The Wedding Day. Now, if you do want to get in touch with the show, I've got 3 great emails to read out shortly. You can. It's theroyleramblepod@gmail.com. That is theroyleramblepod@gmail.com. Put the links down below. I'm also on Twitter @Royle Ramblepod. And we're now on YouTube as well. And it's been good to see quite a few views on I say quite a few, quite a big views for us, really, over at Royle Ramble HQ on the YouTube, and we're on Spotify as well, and wherever your RSS feed will take you. So just before we get to the day's analysis, let's get into some emails. And the first email comes from Simon. And Simon says, "Hey Tom, just to say what a great job you are doing on the Royle Ramble podcast. I've listened to a couple so far and I'm really enjoying it. I love the detail you're going into, and your musings have made me think about the show in a different way. I became aware of your pod for another excellent podcaster, Tom over at One Foot in the Podcast, who recommended it. Definitely worth checking it out if you hadn't. And I just want to interject here and say thank you, Tom. I mean, I don't really know One Foot in the Grave at all, to be honest with you. But, he's part of the brotherhood of these British sitcom podcasters. So any One Foot in the Grave fans out there, go check out One Foot in the Podcast. Anyway, Simon continues. I grew up with the show. I remember watching season 1 on holiday just before series 2 started. I was amazed by the way it was lit, shot and directed. The lack of a laugh track was a new experience for me, and the realism that is Freddie throughout the show made me make a real connection with it. These are people I knew could exist out there. Good, decent, loving people, and we were lucky enough to see a snippet of their lives. They argued regularly, fell out on simple things, but were always there for each other. It taught me a lot about families really, and how it was normal for people to not always get on but still love one another. It was a real family watch for all my clan too. Everyone got together to see the episodes go out. There are not many sitcoms before or since I can think of where that was the case. When it ended its first run in 2000, I remember feeling sad that there would be no more, but thanks to the VHS releases I was able to continue to enjoy them. As I said before, I found something comforting about them. Bizarrely, I don't recall laughing out loud much when I initially watched them. It's only going back to watch it in my later years, I'm 34 now, that I pick up on certain scenes, jokes and interactions in a way that I never did before. The reunion episodes are a mixed bag for me. I don't think I've watched any of them more than twice, and it will likely stay that way. I had no issue with them reviving it, but I just felt something was missing, different. It was almost like watching an Alistair McGowan rip-off of the show. They seem to have become caricatures of themselves. Only Ricky Tomlinson seems to have retained the essence of his character. People will likely disagree with me, and I would love to hear an argument in defence of these episodes. However, we will always have series 1 to 3, preserved for eternity. Waiting for that next watch though, waiting to be shared with my son when he's old enough. I even proudly introduced my wife to the show. Looking forward to more episodes to keep me entertained on my journey to and from work. Keep up the good work. All the best, Simon. And Simon, thank you for that wonderful email. I'm very jealous that you got to appreciate the show in real time. It's interesting going back, actually. Like, as I've said before on the show, I was born in 92, so, I was a young kid when it was around. I sort of remember it being on and stuff like that. But looking back, it really seemed to be a phenomenon. Kind of, I would equate it to perhaps, when I was in year 8, year 9 in school, Little Britain was just the biggest thing ever. And God, where has that gone now? But there was just so much merch. There was even a damn video game of that. But, dear listeners, Google the Royle Family merchandise. There was so much tat, as you would say, like Jim Piggy Banks and My Arse mugs, and I think there's a board game as well. So maybe one day I can go into the history of that. I certainly do want to start a little Royle Ramble book club as well, because I've realised that there's quite a lot of biographies of the main cast. And first on my list is Liz Smith's, I think it's called Dear Betty, Our Betty, and she's also got a spin-off as well that's like short stories that she wrote aside from her life, so really looking forward to that. I'm rambling, but that is the one of the show. And yes, Simon, as I say, I agree with you, like the specials, we're inevitably going to get to them on this pod, and I respect them on a certain level, but also it's just it's not the same show, isn't it? But yeah, thank you so much, Simon, for getting in touch. And our second email comes from Phil. He says, "Hey Tom, came across this podcast through the Royle Family Facebook fan group and have to say it's the best podcast on a TV show, bar none. I made the mistakes of listening to the first 4 episodes back to back, which made waiting for the 5th even harder. Glad it's here. I've always loved reading and hearing detailed analyses of TV shows, which is why your podcast appeals to me so much. I've also enjoyed spotting continuity errors in some of my favourite programmes over the years. It's amazing to think that a show like The Royle Family, with such a simple setup and limited action, could have so much to talk about, and if this and the fan group proves anything, it's that just about every single line is significant, or at the very least, worth quoting. I look forward to more episode analysis from you. I even thought about some of the stuff you might mention when you come to certain episodes, and it'll be interesting to mentally compare notes on these. Don't worry, the Royle Ramble is your baby, and I'm not about to start up a rival one. Anyway, I'm done now. Thanks again for such a great podcast. Off now for a chat with the Arabs. Best wishes, my arse, Phil." Quality of email correspondence by Royle Ramble listeners is fantastic. Thank you, Phil. And, if someone started a Royle Family podcast right now, obviously it's a free country, do what you want, but please, people, Phil and everyone else, the RoyleRamblePod@gmail.com, get in touch with me with any of your thoughts on either stuff that I've covered, or stuff we're building up to, or theories, or whatever. And also, like, when did you first start watching the show? It's another thing that I am really, really interested in. But great to hear from Phil. And the final email comes from Sam. And Sam says, "I'm so impressed by this pod. I had no idea that people analyse programmes like me and my sister. I was getting married around the same time as Denise was, and trying to get pregnant around the same time Denise was pregnant. I watched it straight from the beginning. I remember recording Anthony's birthday and watching it later. I sat in bed with my husband thinking at first that Joe singing was a waste of precious royal time, until the amazing words, 'Still smells of shit in here.'" I mean, Darren, what a quote. What a quote from Andrew Wymert. The one thing I have to say is the reference of Dave's asthma. You said in the podcast it was only mentioned once by Denise, giving it as an excuse for Dave eating loudly. Actually, in the christening episode, Denise says Dave wakes her up with a cig on her mouth. And then I think Mary says, "Doesn't he have asthma?" Now, Sam, that's a good point. Like, I am by no means the omnipotent Royle Family master or anything like that. Obviously I've watched the show quite closely, made a lot of notes on it. Half of the stuff I forget that I write down as well, to be honest with you. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. So, yeah, the asthma thing, that passed me by. Anyway, totally well done, Sam continues. When is the wedding episode out? Looking forward to hear from you, Sam. And, it's weird actually, Sam, because this email would have been in the next episode, but just by virtue, I said earlier, of the laptop overheating, you've managed to slip into the radar. But no, thank you, Sam. I hope you enjoy this wedding episode. And that's the emails. Again, if you want to get in touch, it's the RoyleRamblePod@gmail.com. It would be great to hear from you. And, yeah, let's dig in. And here we are. We're finally at the wedding, an event that has been the narrative backbone of the entire series up to this point. Something subtly first mentioned in the opening scene when we learn that Barbara works at the bakery and Denise asks if they do wedding cakes. And that was 6 weeks ago in that episode when they're in the kitchen looking at the catalogues and stuff. And now we're on the morning of. And of course, this is the wedding day, as the episode is titled, not the wedding itself. And whereas most shows would enshrine the wedding of 2 of their lead characters as a 2-part, maybe even 3-part extravaganza stuffed with cliffhangers and guest stars like, say, Friends or something. I mean, this is the Royle Family, and they do things differently over there. So this episode, of course, tells lots and shows nothing. It's about the preparation, the minutiae. I would argue, though, that this episode is a bit of a knees up for us in terms of Royle Family fans, as we have all the characters that we've met and loved throughout the show together in one place as they all get ready for the occasion. It really is a great showcase of the genius of every single one of the portrayals within this programme. And I love the way that Craig Cash, Carolyn Aherne and co. structure these 6-episode sets, and in this case, the co. being the great Henry Normal. They have a big event brewing in the backdrop, or some great change reflected. In Craig Cash and Phil Millie's Sublime Early Doors, for example, in the first series we see that with the Big Boys Beano coach strip being the focus, which, is building and building, and the coach is getting smaller and smaller as no one else is signing up. And then we get the last episode of the first season, which is an incredible episode where it's the morning where they have a big cooked breakfast, and then they set off, and then it becomes dark, and they return, and they, recount all the adventures they've had. It's amazing. And then in the second series of that, we have the build-up to Mel's 21st. And in the Royle Family too, we have the wedding percolating in this series, in series 2. Spoilers, I suppose, Denise is pregnant, and it's all about her journey to prepare herself for motherhood. And series 3, I suppose, is about how the Royals react to baby David, and explicitly how Denise doesn't really react to him at all. And like the episode we discussed before this, Another Woman, we again start in Barbara's room with someone sitting at the dresser. But this time it's Denise sat there though, and it's early morning rather than midnight. We fade in with Barbara being mother and telling Denise to stop messing with her recently done hair. A do we learn soon is via Sandy Scissors, another callback to someone established in the pilot. Barbara is reflected by a nervously adjusting Denise, and best friend and presumably maid of honour Cheryl. I mean, it's not said, is it, that she's maid of honour, but I would imagine she is. Cheryl is behind her in her own get-up, which was teased in Sunday Afternoon by Mary, and, she's right. It really is a lovely, dusky peach, and she kind of looks like a peach altogether, really. And I've tried to set the scene for you there, but here's what it says in the script. Denise is sitting at dressing table messing with her hair. She is in a nightgown, Cheryl is in a bridesmaid's dress, Mam is in a smart two-piece outfit. And like the last episode too, I'm scouring the table for anything of note, and we do spy a little photo on the left of Denise. It's two young girls looking like ring girls with a boy behind. I mean, I'm going to just have to guess who they are here. Presumably Denise, maybe even Cheryl, considering they've grown up together. All in all though, it's a nice touch to reinforce the matrimonial focus of the episode. And despite it supposedly being the happiest day of her life, Denise is currently anything but.
Stop messing with your hair, Denise. She's done it lovely.
Oh, is it too Princess Anne?
No.
Is it too Princess Anne? It's a reference to Princess Anne's kind of bouffant hairstyle, very pulled back, something that complements Anne's particularly regally defined features, but very much the opposite of what Denise wanted. And it's clever to me as well that a royal is comparing themselves to a royal here. Really like that. Princess Anne, of course, is the second child and only daughter of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. She is 16th in line of succession to the British throne and has been Princess Royal since 1987. Now, in terms of her own look here, reportedly Anne insists on doing her own makeup and hair and drives herself to engagements, having pleaded guilty for 2 separate speeding fines on account of being late. Princess Anne does not shake hands with the public during walkabouts, stating that, quote, "The theory was that you couldn't shake hands with everyone, so don't start." Denise asks if it's to Princess Anne, as the camera pulls back, and we are now viewing Denise from behind as another superb tableau is conjured, with Barbara in the forefront applying a nail polish, Cheryl between them slightly sitting slovenly on the edge of the bed, perched towards Denise, who is in a dressing gown, decrying the work on her hair that's been done. We can also see lots of flowers around the mirror too. It's interesting that we aren't in Denise's room here, as she presumably has the same setup, more geared to her liking too, I'd imagine. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Denise's room, which I don't think we ever do. Well, maybe when they sing to Baby David right at the end of season 3 in the christening episode, but that could be Anthony's room. Knowing the family, they probably popped the cot in there anyway. So, yeah, Denise wanted it all hanging down her face, and Barbara, classic mother here, says, "It will all be hanging down your face if you're not careful." Denise then complains further about Sandy Beswick's work.
She's shite, that Sandra Beswick. She weren't interested, were she, Ma'am?
No, she were definitely hungover.
She was definitely hungover. Sandy Scissors, as she's also known, who's gotten a few mentions in the series early on. And you may recall we spoke about the Beswick brothers as well that gave Anthony the black eye. Are they her nephews, her children? Again, it's never confirmed, but I like that it's up in the air for us to debate, and it's good fodder for the podcast as well. So, Sandy Scissors, Denise stated in the pilot that she was going to still call her Sandra, and to be fair, unlike most things in Denise's life, she does stick to that. She does call her Sandra, but I guess it's an attempt to undermine someone, from Denise's view, and Denise's lack of confidence is explored at the end of the episode, so it makes sense why she just wouldn't come along and call her Sandy Scissors. But, she's not happy with the work as well, so there's a little bit of ire in the voice. And it's worth considering, Sandy Scissors then would have been in the house, or downstairs, doing Denise's hair. I mean, she's gone mobile, we're told, in the first episode. And though the price is decent, she still uses your lecky and sups your brews, so it's not exactly a win-win. I can't imagine lazy-ass Denise either, especially on her wedding day, would move a muscle if she didn't have to. So Sandy Scissors must have just, rocked up bleary-eyed to the royal household and tried to do her best. The idea of someone being definitely hungover as they do your hair is hilarious. But to be fair, she has done a decent job, and it's nice to see Cheryl step up as well when she knows that Denise isn't happy, and she's kind of tending to her tenderly with curlers. Now, we had Barbara mothering Denise at the beginning, and now off-screen, in a particularly coarse senior crow, is the delightful, the incomparable Norma, who is asking permission from her own daughter to make a sandwich at what must be mid-morning at the latest.
Anyone want a sandwich?
Oh, no!
I'm doing one for myself. Is that all right, Barbara?
Yes! Oh, what's she filling her face for at this time? She got all day to fill her face.
The way she says, "Is that all right, Barbara?" That unmistakable cadence is just terrific. It's great that we don't see Norma for a little while here either, but we're made aware of her presence in the house like a looming spectre, one that is currently downstairs getting her gorge on. And the Norma in this episode is a slightly different shade to what we're used to. She's petty, mean and irrational. Not that we haven't seen flavours of that before, but the morning of the wedding seems to really put her in a bit of a different light, to the point where it's Barbara she's constantly pissing off, and Jim who kind of has the laughs with her and doesn't really go for her. As Barbara confirms it's fine for her to stuff her face, she herself is twiddling and fanning her fingers to get the polish to dry, as behind her, Cheryl continues to try and undo hungover Sandra's apparently botched work. And it's at this point, almost a minute into the episode, that we get our first proper look at the bride-to-be. She's not reflected in the slightly muggy mirror she has been before, or from behind as it has been since the opening. Rather now, we're here at her side, seeing her as Dave would see her at the altar, in fact. And Cheryl, like Nana, is always food-focused and asks Denise if she's had any breakfast as the soon-to-be bride quickly puffs a ciggy. And like her dad, we learn that Denise has trouble stuff keeping down. She's got butterflies in her stomach like you wouldn't believe. Which, as this is Royle Ramble, I mean, dear listeners, I love to do this. I love to explore the history of phrases, and we're going to do it later in the episode as well. But I was thinking butterflies in the stomach, and annoyingly, it's very self-explanatory. Just, the feeling of nervousness being akin to the delicate fluttering. I mean, why butterflies rather than bees or hummingbirds? Who knows? But back to the wedding, and Denise is nervous, and this is probably an entirely new experience for Denise, so it's compounding said nerves. I'm not referring to the wedding, of course, but doing anything that involves any pressure or stress. I imagine she's, never performed in front of people at school, never been to big job interviews or anything like that, so, this is really weighing heavy on the crown, as it were. Trembling slightly, she shows Cheryl her shaking hands, and tells her best friend that she looks gorgeous.
I've got butterflies in my stomach like you won't believe. Come on, Cheryl. You look absolutely gorgeous, Cheryl, don't you, Mum?
Yeah, you look like a China doll.
Does she really? I mean, China doll is kind of an insult almost. They're quite vacant-faced and kind of scary. I mean, a China doll, by the way, is a doll made partially or wholly out of glazed porcelain. The name comes from China, being used to refer to the material porcelain. Colloquially, the term China doll is used to refer only to glazed porcelain dolls. A typical China doll has a glazed porcelain head with painted moulded hair and a body made of cloth or leather. They range in size from more than 30 inches tall to 1 inch. Antique China dolls were predominantly produced in Germany, approximately between 1840 and 1940, and rare and elaborately decorated antique China dolls can have value on the collector's market. I'm sure that Jim and Co. would have spotted one of these with Hugh Scully on Antiques Roadshow every now and then.
I tell you what, it's really tight. It's pinching me under the arms.
Is it heck?
The dress is pinching Cheryl under the arms, we learn. Mary mentioned earlier that she was letting the dress out some, but clearly not enough. Is it heck? Denise says too, which isn't really something you say to someone who tells you something like that. Like, if she said, I don't know, I look terrible, she could say, do your heck sort of thing. But when she's telling you something that's actually happening to her that you can't even appreciate, it doesn't really make sense. But again, just being nice, just being supportive. And Barbara does look great as well, and Denise compliments her as such.
You look gorgeous and all, Mum, don't you, Cheryl?
Well, I have to get something good. Dave's mum's got a suit from Marks. Can't let the side down, can I?
If anyone's going to let the side down, it definitely won't be her. She smiles at herself and looks down for a second, before Denise asks her to look at her and if she's putting too much blusher on, as she's applying more. You can't have too much blusher on your wedding day, Cheryl says. You're the blushing bride, ain't you? Which gets a laugh from Barbara. And that got me thinking about the term blushing bride, which is originally a reference to a virgin bride who, lacking sexual experience, might be nervous about her wedding night. Denise, it seems, is so frayed at the edges that she can't even light herself a fag, despite not finishing her current one. So Cheryl does that for her too, lighting one for Barbara as well. Cheryl passes a cigarette across, and we see a bit more of the room now. The tissues on the dresser, the wedding dress itself, which is hanging on the back of the wardrobe. This is the one that we saw Denise rocking as she stood on the coffee table and spoke about Jeanette with the ironing mark on the back of her wedding dress. Cheryl doesn't smoke though. You think she does maybe, but like Jim, her follies, her addictions lay elsewhere. And like Jim as well, Barbara decides to use alcohol to remedy the situation, offering up a drop of brandy for nerves and not seeing any issue in the idea as we learn that the men are all down the feathers. Barbara exits, and of course Denise is more focused on her hair though.
Pull a load more down, Cheryl.
Denise, you look like a bloody Dulux dog.
Yeah. Oh.
The Dulux dog. I mean, classic advert that doesn't seem to be on the TV anymore, but it started in 1961, the sheepdog sort of thing, who was known as Dash. And legend has it that it was the director's dog of the advert, and Dash kept running across the set to play with the child actors, and when it came to editing, the footage was so adorable that they couldn't resist keeping him in. And when Dash retired, a competition to find his replacement saw 450 Old English sheepdog owners enter their dogs. This was held at the Café Royal in London, and the winner was Digby. And, these adverts are iconic, of course, and Channel 4, in their 100 Greatest TV Adverts, ranked the original Dulux dog advert at an impressive number 51. And before we enter the next scene, let's just take account of the three ladies. Barbara is looking refined and certainly up to snuff considering the threat of Dave's mom with the Marxist suit. Denise, as ever, is radiant, quite the opposite of a Dulux dog, with a little tiara placed on top. And Cheryl, well, they do really seem to go for laughs a bit here in this episode with Cheryl. You know, the dress tight, the eyeshadow a little too liberally applied, the hair really all down her face. She's less dusky peach and more reddened cheeks. Barbara now heads downstairs and we see a bike awkwardly leaning across the corridor and against the stairs. This again is a new angle, a full frontal shot of the front door of the home, as if our back was to the kitchen and facing it. The door, by the way, is just such an old classic style. I mean, I keep mentioning my old nan lived in Hemel Hempstead, but so much of her house is so similar to the Royals, and she had the same thing, you know. Rather than a double glazed or sort of an opaque slab of wood with a keyhole, it's actually a big frosted panel of glass with a flinty curtain in front of it. Barbara huffs at the bicycle and pushes it out the way, and there's a great handheld shot here that follows Barbara through the corridor into the kitchen where Norma is dishing up. Norma, who looks great, by the way, very granny, rocking a nice navy blue ensemble with a subtle scarf, a brooch on one side, a small flush of flowers on the other. Barbara asks how she is, she says she's fine, she'll see to herself, but obviously instantly asks if there's any Piccalilli for the cheese. She couldn't find it herself, and she follows this up with a classic Nanaism.
You alright, ma'am?
But don't worry about me. I'll see to myself. Have you got a bit of Piccalilli for this cheese, Barbara? I had a look, but I couldn't see any. And I don't like to root on the wedding day.
Yeah, you'll have to put it on yourself.
Don't like to root on the wedding day. What does that even mean? I mean, how absurd and brilliant. It's kind of like how Barbara had said in an earlier episode, I can't quite remember which one, you know, haven't had a roast because it's summer or something, or didn't make gravy because it's summer. You know, it's just these things that are just so inane, really. And it was just in the fridge right there itself, so she doesn't even have to root. Clearly Norma didn't look in the fridge for the Piccalilli, you know, it doesn't really make sense, but Barbara grabs it as if she hasn't got enough to do, places the jar down and says she has to put it on herself. Piccalilli, by the way, also known as mustard pickle, is a British interpretation of South Asian pickles. It's a relish of chopped and pickled vegetables and spices. The OED traces the word to the middle of the 18th century, when in 1758 Hannah Glass described how to make Piccalilli, or India pickle. And the spelling Piccalilli, as we know it, can be seen in an advertisement in a 1799 edition of the Times. And, you know, it's meant to be a happy day here, but Nana's mind is elsewhere. It's on her stomach, and it's on Gwen's husband's funeral on Monday.
It's Gwen's husband's funeral on Monday. I said to Gwen, so, it's the wedding on the Saturday and the funeral on the Monday. I'd like to wear these new shoes because they'll be worn in by then. But I'm not wearing this outfit because it's a bit too jazzy for a funeral.
You don't want to wear that outfit, ma'am.
Seeing opportunity wherever it presents itself, she talks about wearing her new shoes today for the wedding to break them in for the funeral. But she won't wear the clothes she's rocking as they're too jazzy for a funeral, which, to be fair, you know, they totally are. And, you know, for me, the beauty of this is the fact that she said this to Gwen. Did Gwen really need to hear about this irony? But as ever with Nana, like Jim, there is no filter. But Jim has a bit more common sense and dignity, perhaps. Like, he wouldn't mention a wedding so close to the funeral of your partner. But Nana, she's Nana, isn't she? Barbara continues to root, this time in the lounge, and she comes back with the brandy, plopping it on the side, and then speaks to Norma. And it is just at this point that in come the men, a trio. A seemingly near unconscious Dave, propped up on either side by Twiggy and Jim. Interestingly, they must have looked through the window and seized the opportunity to fuck around on the fly, as there was every chance that the kitchen would have been empty and no one would be around to appreciate their comic genius. Just before we get to that though, we can appreciate a little more of the kitchen as the camera makes room for the boys as they enter. There's a mess of kitchen towels on the back of the door, hanging beside the handle. There's also a plate on the wall of a camel against a dark backdrop of palm trees with some horses or baby camels eating before it. It's kind of hard to make out. And as ever with the royal decor, nothing really has much rhyme or reason. It's decent acting from all of them here as well with the prank. Dave looks bloated and slowly subsides to the table. Twiggy sounds concerned.
Hey, Bob.
What?
Dave's in out of a state.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Jim, how could you let this happen?
Oh.
What now? Here we go, here we go, here we go. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Here we go.
The little murmurings of explanation Jim tries to summon there are great. It's a really funny moment. Everyone's in high spirits, to the point where Jim and Twiggy start to do a little square dance, chanting, "Here we go, here we go, here we go." And also, as they dance, we can spy another ornament hanging beside the pantry, and the Royals have a pantry. Never realised they had a pantry. Again, something my old nan in Hemel Hempstead had as well. As the boys are singing, Dave is beating along in time on the table to the clamour, but Norma and Barbara, they're more relieved than along for the joke. I mean, can you imagine the state of Denise if Dave really was in that state? And it's great to see all of them, Dave, Twiggy and Jim, especially in their suits, but it's especially great to see Twiggy, who we haven't had time with since the pilot, and who is such a brilliant character, superbly played by Geoffrey Hughes. Twiggy and Jim sit down beside Norma, who tells Barbara that there's none of the Piccalilli left, and from Barbara we get a very satisfying riposte that has clearly been bubbling since before Sandy even set up shop in the house.
Barbara, there's no Piccalilli left in this jar.
Shut up, mother.
Shut up, mother, as well, that stinger. Obviously, if Jim was so brazen with a real disgust in his voice like that, she'd be upset, but it's a testing day for her, no doubt. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg here, and her patience is going to be strained further and further, so I think she's entitled to a shut up mother. Norma has probably been here a while too. I imagine she maybe stayed the night before rather than coming over in the morning with her get-up. Jim asks Norma when she's getting ready, and she says she ain't got a hat on yet. Jim hypothesises that it's a whopper, and that she may have borrowed it from Cilla. And Cilla is of course a reference to Cilla Black, aka Priscilla Maria Veronica White, who is an English singer, TV presenter, actress and author. Championed by her friends the Beatles, Black began her career as a singer in '63. Her singles Anyone Who Had a Heart and You're My World both reached number 1 in the UK in 1964. She had 11 top 10 hits on the UK singles charts between then and '71, and additional 8 hits that made the top 40. In May 2010, new research published by BBC Radio 2 showed that her version of Anyone Who Had a Heart was the UK's biggest selling single by a female artist in the 60s. She went on to become a prominent TV presenter. I mean, most people recall Blind Date. Like, I used to love Blind Date on Saturdays. What a great show. And that's what Jim is actually referencing, because I was a bit confused. I was like, okay, he's talking about Cilla, and Cilla wore fancy hats, of course. Like, I googled Cilla hats, and you know, there's lots and lots of images of her at Aintree and whatever. But apparently this is like her phrase, one of her phrases from Blind Date that I didn't remember. So Cilla always joked about buying a new hat when couples got on well, and apparently on 3 separate occasions she had to do just that when couples that met on Blind Date actually tied the knot and she attended the wedding, which is great.
Come on, Norma, girl, how are you getting changed?
Oh, get off, I haven't got my hat on yet.
Well, I bet you're a whopper. You haven't borrowed Cilla's, have you?
Now, the laughter of the 3 here is infectious, and they're getting loads of jokes off.
Dave, what are you doing here? Denise comes down, the wedding will be off.
What do you think I've come for? No, I've only come back from the pub.
Don't you know it's unlucky for the bride to see the groom on the morning of the wedding?
I don't remember seeing you that moment.
Sod off, the lot of you. You're a waste of time.
Twiggy's dirty laugh there is fantastic. Norma asks Dave if he wants a sandwich. I mean, was she really going to make it for him? And regretfully informs him that there's no Piccalilli left in the jar.
Would you like a sandwich, love?
No, thanks, Nana.
There's no Piccalilli left in this jar.
You're joking. Do you think we can continue with the celebrations in the light of that revelation?
I don't know, it's a bit tricky, that, Jim.
Twiggy, ever the charmer, asks for a sandwich too, but not without a side helping of schmooze.
Hey, I'll have a Sally, no. And I'll tell you what.
What?
You are looking lovelier than ever.
Oh, get off.
Hey,
Go on.
You're going to be snapped up at that wedding.
I hope so.
And Norma's up now, and we appreciate that she's wearing a purple apron that she must have put on to make the sandwich, which is kind of endearing and very unnecessary. Jim goes to grab the brandy for themselves, but there's only whiskey available. He pours a little in Twiggy's cup, a bit more in Dave's. Seems to realise he's not being fair and puts some more in Twig's. Then asks Norma.
You having a top, Norma?
No, you know me. I just have a sherry at Christmas and me stout.
Bloody hell, yes or no?
Yes.
Right, just say so.
I love that she goes into the time-honoured quote of what she has when, which we heard in Sunday Afternoon as well, and then when pushed, just says yes. And the whiskey, we can see from behind, is Jameson's. Now, Jameson's is a blended Irish whiskey produced by the Irish distillers subsidiary of Pernod Ricard. Originally one of the 6 main Dublin whiskies at the Jameson's distillery Bow Street, Jameson's is now distilled at the New Middleton distillery in County Cork. It is by far the best-selling Irish whiskey in the world. In 2019, annual sales passed 8 million cases. It has been sold internationally since the early 19th century and is available to buy in over 130 countries. And interestingly, John Jameson was also the great-grandfather of the inventor Marconi, who was a pioneer of love the radio. And I'm a big fan of Jameson's myself. You know, as a kid, like before I drank, the whiskey that I wanted to try was Jack Daniels, just because Slash from Guns N' Roses drank that. But as I was getting older and started to drink more, and then also became obsessed with The Wire, McNulty, if you've seen the show, you may remember that Jameson's is his drink. And Rhonda Perlman, who's one of his squeezes, says that that's his scent, Jameson's and Listerine. Now, Jim seems to kind of lose himself for a moment here and go into his speech for a second. Perhaps, you know, it's playing on his mind.
Hi there. It's my little girl, Denise.
Hang on, Jim, it's not your speech yet.
Oh, no, I'm not doing my speech. I put a nice few gags in my speech, though.
Dave says it's not time yet. Jim concurs and says there's a few gags in there. And again, what a shame that we missed Jim's speech. What a shame that we can't see so much here. Norma says, you know, the speech is fine as long as it isn't blue. And that got me thinking, like, why do people call rude things blue? Now, according to Green's Dictionary of Slang, in the 18th century, itinerant Parisian booksellers covered their seditious or obscene material with blue paper. The first citation for blue meaning obscene comes from 1818. Farmer and Henley note the French Bibliothèque Bleue, a series of books of very questionable character, although they also suggest it may be derived from the blue dress of harlots, which seems to me at least a little less likely. Twiggy then gets into speaking about one of his favourite comedians.
Hey, I hope it's not blue.
Oh, no. Nothing blue. You'll have to watch your Chubby Brown video for that, Norma.
Hey, I love that Chubby Brown. Saw him last year at the Apollo. He was absolutely disgusting. Bloody marvellous.
I mean, of course Twiggy likes Roy Chubby Brown. I mean, very, very unsurprising there, and I love that you get to mention Roy Chubby Brown, for those not aware. English stand-up, Royston Vasey, also known, whose act consists of offensive humour, high profanity, forthright social commentary, and outspoken disdain for political correctness. In 2003, Brown was fined £200 in Blackpool, listen to this, for assaulting a heckler by pulling him from his seat, dragging him across the floor and proceeding to attack him with a golf umbrella. Brown later claimed, quote, "I just wanted the man to stop swearing and being abusive in front of women and children who were on the pier." I mean, surely you were doing that yourself, Chubby, but, you know, they paid for that, I understand. And in 2014 as well, Chubby was fined for reading the Sun, of course, newspaper whilst driving on the A19 road in North Yorkshire. Now, Chubby Brown, like, I remember him as a kid, like, family members just having so many videos on him. Like, he just seemed omnipresent in that sort of market. And I went onto his Wikipedia, and they have a whole list of all his releases. And I'm just going to read out 5 of my favourites here. And, you know, I'm sure Twiggy loves these as well. Obscene and Not Heard, Thunder Bollocks, Saturday Night Beaver, King Fong, and finally, The Good, the Bad, and the Fat Bastard. Twiggy keeps Norma in the convo, though. Says that she'd like him, despite her saying she doesn't like anything blue. Twiggy then pulls a knowing gurn at Jim as well. And, like, you know, everyone's in quite a rambunctious mood here. Like, they always kind of are with Norma anyway, like the matron sort of thing, just playing up. But here especially, everyone's kind of giddy. You know, and can you imagine some of the jokes that Twiggy has in his back pocket? Like, Christ. Nana then asks one of you big fellas, I love that she says that, to put a film and a camera. She's got a 36, it's going to be a long day. I mean, a 36, can you imagine that? iPhones now, you can just take thousands of photos, can't you? You're limited to 36 photos. You really have to make them last. And again, to see these photos, to hear Jim's speech. And as talk of the big fellas subsides, a big lady comes in, Cheryl. And again, I'm not trying to body shame, you know, no doubt unintentional, but something worth noting is the dialogue does segue. And she actually kind of looks nice to me. So here's Cheryl entering to much fanfare.
Hey, drop and blossom. Oh, sorry, Norma. It was a compliment.
If our Denise doesn't turn up, Dave, you can always marry Cheryl in that rig house.
Oh, aye.
Dave.
And there's the blueness that Twiggy loves front and centre there. But still, heart of gold, of course, quick to reassure Norma that it's compliment. Cheryl, though, is straight to business. Says Denise wants Dave out as they're jeopardising their future happiness. No doubt she would have heard the rabble downstairs. There's a nice touch, too, that as Cheryl is talking, she grabs the front of her dress and adjusts the aforementioned tightness. It really does look to be pinching her under the arms. Dave inquires if Denise likes the flowers, which she does. Cheryl asks where he got them from. Cheryl asks him where he got them from, and he asks Twiggy, who is putting the film in Nana's camera.
Where'd you get them from, Twiggy?
If you knew that, you'd know as much as me, kid.
She alright?
Well, yeah, no. Well, she's starting to panic.
Hey, it's not the only one. My house is like that.
Again, that laugh. Dave confides that his arse is pulsing with nerves. He's clasping and opening his palm to Cheryl, and then she leaves. And as she does, she passes what we can see in like an ironing board up against the wall, and a cork board too, with a few cards and such pinned up. Norma asks Dave about his best man's whereabouts. Barry, of course it's Gary, very, very Nan thing of just, Nans will remember names but always get the first letter wrong, like that's just my experience of it. So she says Barry, we know it's Gary from the Butchers, who was mentioned in the first episode and the second one too, him who smells of mints, him who was dumped by Sandy Bezic due to having blood under his fingernails.
Hey, where's your best man? Barry, ain't it?
No, Gary, he's got to work. He can't get the morning off.
Oh.
He's going straight from the Butchers.
That's all we want, innit? The church stinking of bloody mints.
Hey, you know what'll happen, don't you? He'll put his hand in his pocket for the ring and pull out a pork chop.
Funny moment, and great sudden transition of Dave laughing, looking at his future father-in-law Jim off camera, into Denise, in her mother's arms upstairs. Barbara is reflective in the mirror, concerned, as Denise embraces her elbow, still with a ciggy between her fingers.
I hate me hair. He's downstairs. It's just all going wrong.
I know, it's all too much, isn't it,
It is.
love? Oh, hey, come on.
Cheryl comes in, relays that Dave is nervous too, and I love that Denise coos to her as she's mimicking the squeezing motion that Dave used for his arsehole. She also says that she thinks Twiggy is trying to cop with her, and Barbara's expression here is great as she looks over her shoulder with the brandy aloft. I mean, Twiggy was just being Twiggy really, wasn't he? But attention-starved Cheryl probably saw it as something more. And Twiggy and Cheryl do actually get together properly later on, so it's interesting to see the seeds sown here, as it were. I mean, these are young, sexually active women, after all. I think about when we first met Cheryl with Denise, and they're pointing at men's knobs in the catalogue. I'd shag him, Cheryl says when referencing Gary, but Twiggy is probably more in her league here. I mean, it's a wedding after all. People like to cop off, and I can't imagine there'd be too many suitors for Cheryl, so she's being realistic.
I think Twiggy's trying to cop with me.
You wouldn't go with him, would you?
No, not Twiggy. No way.
You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Barbara smiles at this as Norma enters, out of breath from the stairs. She goes over to Denise, kisses her forehead clumsily, ushers the tiara back. And you may remember that Norma, Mary and Barb ruminated on the unhappiness of marriage earlier in the Sunday afternoon episode, which was the last time we saw Nana proper. And now she's back at it again.
Now, where's the bride-to-be?
Hiya, Nana.
Oh, how are you, love?
I'm all right, thanks. Oh, Nana.
This is the happiest day of your life, love. It'll all be downhill from here, won't it, Barbara?
Oh, leave it, ma'am.
Nana then gives Denise some earrings that we find out are borrowed rather than old and are not to be considered a present.
I brought you them earrings. There you are, love.
Thanks, Nana.
Now, ma'am, are they somewhat old or somewhat borrowed?
Borrowed. I'm sorry, love, but I couldn't part with them even for you.
Which again shows Nana's selfish side. I mean, you really wouldn't part with them for your granddaughter's wedding. Barbara shoots her a glance, knowing that she would do the same for her grandchild. I mean, she'd do the same for anyone, I think, Barbara. So Barbara then takes off her heart necklace and gives it to Denise for keeps, and they share a really nice moment.
Here, have this then. Have
Oh.
Your heart necklace.
this. Yeah.
Oh, man, for keeps.
Oh.
What's it look like?
Oh, it looks lovely. It looks lovely.
So now they're going through the something old, something new. And the something blue, you know, it's quite literally blue, as it's a garter that Cheryl got her, which Denise shows off to much noise. Nana declares it kinky, and it's surely something Twiggy would approve of, you know. They all laugh, the mood's lifted slightly, and Nana actually gets a funny gag off here, almost something that Jim would say at her expense.
If I get married again, the something blue will be the veins in my legs.
Barbara offers Nana a brandy, not knowing she's already had a whiskey. She does the faux protest and then relents to wet her whistle, as it were.
Hey, do you want a little brandy, ma'am?
No, thanks, love. You know I don't drink.
Go on, just a little small one.
Oh, well, just to wet me whistle, then. Make it a double while you're at it, will you?
Norma then compliments the cheese, finds out that it was from the precinct, another place that I imagine in detail. The four of them all cheers, and whilst three of them seem to struggle getting it down, Nana just guzzles. Barbara takes a moment then to reflect on how long they've been planning it, which it isn't clear. I mean, we met this lot 6 weeks ago in the timeline, and I can't imagine it's been too long of an engagement considering their age, and obviously it's not even Denise's first engagement, as we learned in the last episode. More laughter then rises from downstairs, and Denise is worried about the time. It's 10 past. She's frantic again, and asks Barb to get that knobhead, aka future hubby, out of here.
God, what time is it?
Oh, it's 10 past.
10 past. Oh, Mum, will you go and get rid of that knobhead I'm marrying?
Yeah.
Oh, God, this is just all doing my head in now.
We then cut downstairs and learn that they're laughing at Anthony as he's in the kitchen and his haircut is taking it from all angles. He reaches for the Jamesons but slapped away by Jim. Twiggy says, "Tell us who did it and we'll go get them for you." Dave touches it, says it's severe, asks if it's cut from the inside. Barbara enters and says he looks lovely though, and then points him upstairs to get his suit on all laid up on the bed. Barbara then urges Dave out, says she needs to sort out her mum's hat and exits, along with Twiggy, who needs a slash, leaving Jim and Dave with a bottle of whiskey between them, an empty Piccalilli jar, and a half-eaten sandwich. Jim gets a great scene at the end of this episode with the bride, and here he is with another one-on-one with the groom. And this is something we've focused a fair bit on in the show so far. The somewhat good, somewhat tepid advice that the Royals and Dave Best himself seems to peddle. But to be fair, this is pretty good advice.
You all right, kiddo?
Ah, yeah.
Not long now, eh?
Oh.
I just want to give you a little bit of advice. Now, my own dad gave me this advice years ago on my wedding day, so it's genuine. Just a little tip, just something to keep them sweet. If you're going for a night out with the lads and you think you're going to be in about 11:30, tell her you won't be back till 12. Then when you get back at 11:30, she'll be made up because she'll think you've come back early for her. Do you know what I'm saying? Just one step ahead. It's just a little tip, but it keeps you in her good books.
Good one, that, Jim.
Well, it's up there for thinking, down there for dancing.
The slight high pitch with which Craig Cash delivers "good one that, Jim" is excellent. Down there for the dancing is said as well. Up there for thinking, down there for the dancing. Dave then says he needs to get going. Takes a final drop. And in comes a real sincere scene, actually. Demonstrative of how skillfully the show can turn and get frank and heartfelt at a moment's notice.
I'll be seeing you later anyway, won't I?
Aye. Hey, son, you will look after her, won't you?
Aye, Jim, I will.
The way Jim refers to Dave as son here, which I don't think we've heard yet. Dave very simply saying "I, Jim," and looking straight at him honestly. And, we trust he will. I will, he says. And Jim looks sad for a second, perhaps acutely aware for the first time that Denise is going to be a best very soon, and all of this is going to change forever. We then cut to Twiggy upstairs with Twiggy sound effects. He's zipping up his fly as a toilet flushes behind him. Of course, he can't help himself and gets a little joke in with Norma.
Hey, Norma, no sliding down the banisters there, girl.
Oh, Norma's spirited laugh there. The traditional Nana, oh, as well. Twiggy knocks on the bedroom door, asks if they're decent, says he's coming in anyway. I mean, he's really non-stop in this episode and can't relent with his trowel of charm.
Are you decent?
Yeah.
Well, I'm coming in anyway. Oh, Denise, you look lovely.
This is still my dressing gown.
I know, but if you look that good in the dressing gown... Hey, this is your last chance. I've got a fast car downstairs, I've got 2 tickets for Rio in the glove box, and a load of knock-off sports gear in the boot. What do you say?
Oh, you're tempting me now, Twiggy.
What sort of sports gear have you got?
I've got a load of tracky bottoms. I'm getting them out at the reception. I'll sort you out.
Cheryl's clearly in it at the moment, inquires about the sports gear. And we learn that Twiggy, ever classy, has lots of it and is getting it out of the reception. What an entrepreneur. And like Jim too, Twiggy just struggles to give serious answers. Denise asks how Dave is. Twiggy says he's wearing his suit, but also running shoes, so maybe having second thoughts. Cheryl laughs at this, a little too much, perhaps. I mean, you may recall in the first episode, when Twiggy was trying to shift the gear in the living room, and she was listening besotted, as Twiggy was relaying the issues with his little Lee wanting designer stuff, and none of this old shite. Twiggy, though, always has the heart of gold, as mentioned, even when he's threatening disability.
Can you imagine what a state I'd look if he didn't turn up?
Hey, imagine what a state he'll look when you caught him. He's skipping off nowhere. I'll break his legs for you if I have to.
Oh, cheers, Twiggy.
Hey, have a great day.
It's very sweet of him to pop in, to say hello, to reassure her. He's clearly known Denise since she's a child, loves her like one of his own, very proud of her. And Cheryl clearly has something ignited within her from Twiggy. She's lying forward on the bed like a schoolgirl, chin on her hands turned towards Denise.
Denise, I think if there's no one better, I'm going to cop with him tonight.
Ah, I'd be made up without him.
And Denise says that as she's taking the dress off the hanger. He'll be made up with that, she says, which is not really happy for Cheryl or anything, because Twiggy is probably twice her age and twice her weight. But Cheryl seems to be on cloud 9. kicking her shoes together like a crushing teenager. And her saying, if I don't find no one better. I mean, it's unlikely, isn't it? The writers seem to be saying. But it's a wedding. I mean, everyone's trying to get a bit of something. We're back downstairs now with Dave and Jim. Jim seems to have just been finishing saying something as Twiggy enters, who declares that Dave is far too ugly for Denise, takes him off, says goodbye to the girls, which leaves Jim alone with his whiskey and his thoughts. Also a bit of Nana sandwich still uneaten. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a piece of line paper and begins to rehearse. He gets up, starts to pace, laughs a little at his own stuff. It's very difficult to kind of make out. He's saying something about the people who were invited or the people who hadn't or something like that, but you can't, the way they do it, it's not like you just hear a straight line that he's going to say or anything like that. It's very kind of under the breath, you know. He laughs at his own stuff, and then possibly the least receptive audience member one could wish for enters. That's Joe.
Yeah. You all right, Joe?
Yeah?
I'm just going through my speech.
Oh.
Nice close-up shots here on the handheld as we get near to Jim as he's speaking, close enough to see his wrinkled nose. Jim says the speech can't be too blue because of Dave's family. He wants to walk a line. To which Joe actually seems to respond to, rather than just saying, oh, hi. It's a shame, he says, that Jim can't just deliver something as he would want it. It's surprising that, you know, there's even a hint of smile from Joe. We're going to see Joe develop as this episode goes on. He seems different slightly now. Jim compliments Cheryl to her father on the dress, who is perhaps now saying a little too much.
Your Cheryl looks smart in her dress, doesn't she?
Aye, she does. It's cutting her under the arms.
What is?
The dress.
Oh.
She's too fat for it.
Oof. Even Jim wouldn't be so blatant about his own children. That's harsh and cringy and real, you know. Despite it being the happiest day of Denise's life and a big occasion overall, her best mate is still getting body shamed by her father. Thankfully, Mary wasn't around to hear that. Mary, who you guys know I adore, and Mary who comes in. Jim compliments her and seems genuinely moved by it, and she really does look lovely, actually. I mean, he calls her a leprechaun, but that's more because she's Irish and it's green, and, you know, it's meant kindly, I think. You know, Jim's really actually quite nice to Mary in this scene. A leprechaun, of course, is a diminutive supernatural being in Irish folklore, classed by some as a type of solitary fairy. They're usually depicted as little bearded men wearing a coat and hat who partake in mischief. In later times, they've been depicted as shoemakers who have a hidden pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Now, leprechaun-like creatures rarely appear in Irish mythology and only became prominent in later folklore. So Mary, she's rocking a light, you know, Irish green jacket on a dress, a little pillbox hat to top it off proceeding. She looks fantastic, and she takes the compliment enthusiastically, but is there really any other way that Mary takes things, you know? She then returns the compliment to Jim, declaring her suit is only from C&A. And C&A, there is a name. So I was born in 92. I'm obsessed with, like, late 90s culture that's kind of like, again, it was when I was like 7 or 8, but I can still kind of remember it vividly. And I remember C&A. C&A, for those not aware, well, it still exists in the world, but doesn't exist over here in Europe anymore. And C&A, well, C&A was, I mean, it exists in Europe, doesn't exist in the UK anymore. C&A is a Belgian, German, Dutch chain of fast fashion retail clothing with European head offices in Belgium and Germany. It has retail stores in many European countries. It serves only the largest markets of Asia, North America, and South America. Now, it's interesting that C&A gets referenced because C&A will be closed down within 2 years. This is from The Guardian, Thursday the 15th of June 2000. Fashion store group C&A is to close all 113 of its UK stores with the loss of 4,800 jobs announced yesterday. And C&A is also mentioned by the UK ska act The Specials. They reference the store in the song Man at C&A on the 1988 album More Specials. And the phrase Man at C&A was later used to typify someone who was unfashionable. You know, nice forgotten relic there from the 90s that I can still recall. Shout out to all those that have fallen in the world. The Dorothy Perkins, the Adams, the Woolworths, the everything, really, isn't it?
I tell you what, Mary, you look bloody lovely. You look like one of them leprechauns.
Oh, thank you, Jim. It's only C&A. You look lovely yourself, Jim. Do you like Joe's suit there? We bought it for his brother's funeral.
Hey, 52 he was.
Do you like Joe's suit? Mary asks. But before Jim can even answer, and he would have been given a minor pleasantry at best, Mary relays that they bought it for his brother's funeral, which makes an interesting parallel to Norma, who is breaking in her new shoes for the funeral next week. But of course, the outfit is too jazzy for her, but in Joe's case, he can wear this for a funeral on his brother, and he can wear this for the marriage of Denise and Dave. And just really sad, kind of like a bit of a blindsider there. Mary states that Joe bought it, but we heard in the second episode how clueless Joe is with buying anything, so obviously it was all her. And 52 he was as well. Jim nods. She looks at Jim. That eye as well of Joe's. 52, And Joe then looks vacantly into the nothingness of the kitchen, and the scene ends. And, it's these painful moments that they embed within the joyous day. The bittersweetness of Royle Family is just incredible. And it's the smash cut as well. The way we went from Dave laughing about the pork chop into Denise crying. And now we're going on from Joe reflecting on his gone-too-soon brother into the living room. And just everyone's in a jovial mood. And even though Joe's chatting, Joe still has to exemplify his personality through words now and just bring things down. Not through awkward silences, but just through, my brother died. And this is the same suit that I'm wearing, so that's kind of sad in of itself. And he was 52. And how old's Joe meant to be? Joe looks a lot older than his time. Joe probably isn't that much older ever, but, 52 is obviously no age at all. Now, as the episode started with a young Royle in front of the mirror, messing with her bonce, and Barbara trying to help, we have that here again, but this time it's Nana in front of the mirror, complaining that her hat is too far forward. That's the fashionable way to wear it, Barbara says, as if that's going to stymie any of Nana's complaints. From behind them with Jim in tow come Mary and Joe in the room. Mary's overjoyed. Her and Barbara kiss and hold hands and say hello. Barbara decries the whole place as chaos, which it always is to be fair, but this time it's turned up to 11 with the nuptials imminent. Barbara relays that Denise was crying earlier, but your Cheryl is with her, and it's okay now as they're bitching about Beverly Macker. How did she get brought up? What's she got to do with anything? Silly question, I know, with Denise, but still. Cheryl maybe knows too well that when nothing else is working, bring up Bev to distract Denise. The TV's whirring in the background, it's Formula One. We cut to Anthony, looking very smart in his suit. He's buffing his shoes. Barbara asks why he's doing it in the living room without a newspaper being down. I can't imagine it will grind up the carpets any more than they currently are, but still. And Nana's still in Nanaland.
Is this act too far forward?
No, we can still see your face. I'm only joking, Oliver.
It's nice that Jim makes it clear that it's a joke. He says it so automatically, as if he's always got one in the chamber. But despite that easy, quick-fire nature of his, he's clearly nervous, pensive, the speech playing on his mind. We then see Anthony bring a newspaper in and glaring at Barbara as he turns the TV down a notch, but that isn't enough.
Anthony, won't tell you again. Turn that telly down.
I just turned it.
Turn it again.
And to be fair, F1 does penetrate a bit more than the usual Judith Chalmers fare or whatever. Jim is dishing out more whiskey. They drink a lot in this episode. Especially considering he's been to the pub this morning too, and all he's going to down later. Joe has got one, Barbara's one. He asks Norma, who's fixing a hat, who responds immediately with a yes. There's tension in this room. Anthony asks for one. Fair, really, considering the liberalness of how they've been dished out, but he's denied. Mary's abstaining, understandably, and she then compliments Anthony on his new haircut. And Mary, being Mary, views him in ecclesiastical terms.
Look at Anthony's lovely haircut. He looks like a little choir boy.
He looks like a little gay boy.
Again, Jim with the lightning response. Not particularly funny, though. Is it me, or was gay boy the de facto insult of the late 90s, early 2000s? Maybe it's my personal bias here, as I was in school at that time, but gay boy and calling people gay, or indeed anything negative being perceived as gay, sadly that was kind of the catchphrase of the time. And it's sad as well because Anthony, who has been scolded as normal, is given a kind compliment from Mary, which Jim immediately treads on, causing Anthony to look off in the distance, roll his eyes, and get back to scrubbing. Barbara states she's been so busy this morning that she's hardly had time to smoke, even though we did see her earlier smoking. Barbara grabs for a ciggy, standing between Jim and Norma, and Cheryl then comes in and introduces the bride-to-be.
You ready? Here comes the bride.
Oh, you look bloody gorgeous, kids.
Oh, you look lovely.
But does my hair look like shite?
No, you look gorgeous. Oh, Jim, you must feel so proud.
Denise really does look incredible in the dress, twirling a handbag like Sandy from Greece in the You're the One That I Want video, and to be fair, she looks electrifying. Joe watches, smiles, Mary waxes lyrical.
Look at the pairs here. Denise, the blushing bride, and our Cheryl Dusky Peach.
Denise looks so good to the point where Anthony dishes out a sincere compliment.
Aye, Denise, you look dead nice in that dress, honest.
Oh, cheers, Aunt. You don't look too bad yourself.
I like how she playfully hits him with her bag and he smiles as he takes it. And Cheryl, Cheryl looks like we've seen her before, really. They certainly don't compliment each other, and Denise does perhaps look better in comparison. And, there's a lot of shots here of them beside each other and they're wrung for all they're worth. And Nana goes in for the compliments too, but of course she can't help assert herself and her belongings as well.
Them earrings set it up a treat, Denise.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Nana.
Don't lose them.
Bloody hell, Nom. Don't you think she's got enough to worry about?
Hilarious moment. The cold efficiency of don't lose them. This, she says, as she's still smiling from what she just said, is terrific. It properly sums up her selfish ways and the fact that this is still on the forefront of her mind. Jim fairly defends her and asks if she's not got enough to worry about, which is, it's just more oil on the fire from Nana here. The doting dad Jim passes a cigarette to his daughter before an unlikely source speaks up from the entrance to the kitchen.
Denise.
Oh, hiya, Joe.
Nice outfit.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Bloody hell, steady on, Joe, you silver-tongued chap.
It's Joe again, and it's so great here. Classic screenwriting, isn't it? Show a character's growth and change in the finale, as the normally taciturn Joe speaks up somewhat with a kind word. He's drinking whiskey too from the Tory tea mug, which, the mystery persists over this, but listen back to old episodes. We've had a great email about the idea of why they have a Tory tea mug in the royal family household. And, I think the creators want us to debate this as well, because Joe is holding the mug and it is square on Tory tea. It's not even sort of boom, you can just see it. Maybe that's coincidence, maybe not. But, of course, Joe, he's seen Denise grow up like Twiggy, from a child, and now she's about to go down the aisle, and, that is a very, very powerful thing. Really tender moment between Joe and Denise, really sweet, and Denise is reflective now. Change is looming.
God, it's my last day here. You miss us, Aunt?
Oh, yeah, like a hole in a parachute. I'm having your room.
Get lost, that's my room. What if me and Dave want to stop over?
We only live down the bloody road.
Mum, will you tell him?
Oh, we'll talk about it later, love. Now, don't forget when you get to Tenerife to give us a ring. I want to know how you're getting on.
Yeah.
Peace between the siblings didn't last long, did it? Didn't even last a minute on her wedding day. Classic Denise here, though. Why does she care? As said earlier, I would have loved to have seen their rooms, but we never get to that. But it's nice for Ant to get an upgrade somewhere. Denise just can't let it go. Despite her having her own place with her own husband, and they live just down the road, I wonder how far away it is actually, she still wants a place to stay. It's kind of amazing. They're off to Tenerife, aren't they, too? We heard this on the Sunday afternoon episodes, get mentioned again here. Mary and Joe are then getting ready to go off as a taxi's coming soon. This is a pre-Uber age. But before they leave, Mary sits beside Denise, clearly elated, really like it's her own daughter. She sings Going to the Chapel. And again with Mary, she's always thinking of things through a theological prism. Something that doesn't really seem to have rubbed off on either a husband or a daughter.
All the best. See you in church. Whoa. Going to the chapel and you're going to be married. Oh, it's going to be a lovely day. I know it. And the weather's lovely. God's smiling down on you already.
Oh, ta, Mary. Ta for making the dress.
Oh. The sound she makes dismissing that the dress was any trouble is fantastic. And Chapel, Going to the Chapel, Chapel of Love, is a song written by Jeff Barry, Ellie Greenwich and Phil Spector and made famous by the Dixie Cups in 1964, where it spent 3 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It's been covered by many people, including Bette Midler, Beach Boys, and even Elton John on the 4 Weddings and a Funeral soundtrack. Mary, though, is straight back into mother mode after speaking to Denise, and though she doesn't mean to, this is probably this is quite demeaning to Cheryl, isn't it?
Cheryl, love, hold yourself up straight. That's a good girl.
There's a good girl, is what gets me, the way she smiles after that. But, it's just that she noticed she was slouching and reached to correct it. Again, it's these slightly cringe, uncomfortable moments the show feels a need to scatter amongst the more traditional tropes of familyhood. It's that combination that really makes the royal family tick for me. They leave. Jim announces he needs a tom tit. Norma decrees that he's lucky and that with her it's all or nothing. She just never lets things slide, does she? Now she's purely telling us about how things do slide, as it were. Denise then realises there's an issue with the presents. It's decided that they'll come back with Cheryl in the taxi. Denise is not happy though.
I've just thought of something.
What?
What we're going to do about all the presents. I'll have to give you the keys to our flat because we're not going back there. We're going straight to Tenerife.
Well, you best not leaving them presents in your flat. They'll get robbed.
Yeah?
Well, I'll have to bring them back here and we'll put them in your room.
No, don't put him in her room. I'm having her room. Put him in my room.
Anthony, will you shut up about my room? You're making Cheryl smudge me wedding nails.
You should have done that before you put that frock on.
It's the little details here. The fact she says wedding nails, for example. And Denise just cannot let this go at all, can she? Her whole matrimonial life in front of her, prospect of a family, and still fighting with her little brother over an old poxy room that she'll never stay in. Again, I'm pleased for Anthony. I'm glad that he's getting a little something out of this. Denise blows on her nails.
If that bottle goes over, that'll be it.
And Nana, she's just on one.
Cheryl, that looks right tight on you, that dress.
That's the style of the dress.
Oh.
I mean, what a nasty thing to say, first of all, with Cheryl in response probably parroting what her mother had said to her as words of comfort. But Nana said that they had to be careful with the nails, and now she could rattle Cheryl in her undermining of her. It's good to see Barbara giving Nana daggers too as well. Anthony's badgered again about the TV, told it's an important day and it shouldn't be on. I mean, similar to Nana who said she didn't want to root on a day like this. Like, well, what does that mean? Oh, it's a wedding day, so don't watch TV. There's a clog upstairs of a flush, and Jim is back down with his own issues. I mean, Jim's in a state here, needing relief and asking what they have in the house for the trots. And Nana, again, it's just everything's firing off, isn't it? She really seems to be on the warpath at the moment to anyone, looking to irritate as many family members as possible with her irrational bullshit.
I tell you what, Barbara, I'm thinking of asking Dave to run me home to get me comfortable shoes after the church do, ready for the night do.
Nana, Dave can't run you home.
Oh, he will. He's very fond of me, is David.
Hey, Dave's a bloody groom. He's not nipping no one nowhere, no bloody how.
Nana, you'll have to get someone else to run you home.
Oh, no, and I don't like to ask anybody else.
Oh, but you don't mind asking the groom. Mum, will you tell her?
Ma'am, you'll have to get a taxi.
Yeah, she's asking for the groom to drive her off to grab some comfortable shoes. I mean, it beggars belief. And it's great to see Denise using her ultimate weapon, the backup of her mam, on Nana rather than Anthony. I mean, maybe she's getting a little more mature perhaps, but perhaps not. Back to Jim's arse now, and Anthony's requested to go off to the chemist, but there's no time, nor does it really feel fair for them to stop off on the way. So he's ousted, heads over to Lorraine's, her with the leggings from episode 2, to see if she has any. Jim talks about the fact that the last thing he wanted was ring sting on the aisle. Like, is that a pun? Perhaps, maybe. Subtle reference, very clever. But I just love how the action ramps up here. Like, it's been quite leisurely in parts. Like, okay, Denise has been crying upstairs, etc. There's been a little bit of tantrums there, but that's been quite contained. Maybe because Nana wasn't really in the mix there. But all the stuff we've seen in the kitchen, all the lads, you know, these tender moments, these kind of jovial stuff. But now, in the lounge, especially when we just boil it down to the royals, the minerals of it, it's a little chaotic. Nana, again, presents more minor problems after this, talking of breaking in the shoes, thinking out loud as she's fed Robson, and just keeping on with it. So irritating. Denise also throws more stuff on the fire by remembering the wedding cake, and what will they do with that? Cheryl decides they can take it back in the taxi too. I mean, this is all just minor stuff that, one, could have been agreed beforehand, and two, isn't really an issue at all, is it? Like, it's weird that they just assume that if they leave the presents in the flat that they'll all get robbed. Like, is that just a reality of that kind of? Maybe, but, you know, I'm sure they'd be okay. Ant returns empty-handed as Lorraine wasn't in. The taxis are outside though, and thus begins another mad swirl of energy to get everyone gone. Anthony wants in the front of the taxi, which is a little odd. I mean, the front of a car, sure, but of a taxi, it's slightly less appealing. But I guess any chance for him to be away from that lot, even by a few inches, is probably worthwhile though in his head. But he's pulled back before he can leave to say goodbye.
Hey, I'm getting in the front
Hey,
with you, right?
you just come back here and wish your sister good luck. It's the last time you'll see her as a single woman.
Good luck, fat arse.
See you, Aunt.
That's the best you'll get off him. Now go on, bugger off.
I like how Barbara says that's the best you'll get out of him, but she says bugger off as well, so. And that's the beginning of a superb sequence where everyone says their goodbyes for the final time. And next up is Nana.
All the best, Denise. And I've got 36 films in my camera, so I'm sure to get a good one.
Thanks, Nana.
I'll try.
Her language is perfect there. In the same way video game consoles for parents become PlayStations and Nintendos, like I've got 36 films in my camera is spot on. Cheryl follows, and they have a real nice moment where she refers to her best friend as Mrs. Best, and Denise confirms that she'll make sure that she catches the posy. After this is Barbara, and this is just, oh man, this it always brings a tear to my eye, this moment.
Denise,
Ma'am.
you look absolutely gorgeous.
Do I?
Yeah. Oh, love, I hope you're going to be very happy. He's a lovely lad, Dave.
Yeah.
Oh, my little Denise.
My little Denise, she says. I mean, this is her firstborn too. But, of course, the moment doesn't get too much time to land.
I think I'm through the worst of that now.
I'll see you later, Jim. See you later.
Okay.
Ruptured by Jim's arse antics, and that just leaves two left in the house, Denise and her dad. It takes on a different air here from this moment for the rest of the episode. Jim ushers Denise over to the window to see Nana get in the taxi.
He's come and see you, Nana. Bloody hell. Who else you know? We're getting a bloody taxi ass first like her. Hey, your mum looks great, doesn't she? She's done you really proud, kid. Even our bloody Anthony scrubbed up well.
Barbara does look great, and Anthony. Denise is crying though. The event is clearly getting to her.
Hey, what's the two?
Nothing. It's just the last time I'll be Denise Royle. It's really weird getting married. I don't even know whether I like it.
Soft. You bloody love it, won't you?
Does anyone else tear up when they see Denise crying, Carolyn Aherne crying? I mean, she's so natural here. And a lot of the insecurities are bubbling right to the top. You know, when Jim says he's dead proud of her, she counters with the fact that she could never hold down a job. And Jim counters with the fact that she doesn't have to worry about that anymore. Her partner will do that. I mean, like father, like daughter, right? The car arrives, apparently a beaut. Denise isn't ready, though, and asks her dad to stave him off for a second.
Just a minute, pal. Just a few last-minute preparations. Preparations, my ass. Come on. That's a little drop of whiskey.
They sit down. Jim gives her a cigarette and a drop of whiskey. Jim cigarettes too. We never see Jim smoking. I know I keep saying that. Jim's crying a little too. Takes his glasses off, which really disarms me. I mean, we saw him without his glasses in the last episode as well, Another Woman, and I guess they're just so iconic. Yeah, it's quite startling when he's not got them on. Jim brings up Cheryl. Can't resist getting another dig in. And despite insulting her best friend, Denise just gets real here. And it's what's said and what's not said, and what Denise and Jim even struggle to get out, but obviously mean. Because Denise, like, I always remember her saying, like, I love you. Like, you know, she says, I'm always going on about picking nose and farting, you and my mum more than anything.
Dad, you know I never say anything nice to you. And I'm always going on at you for picking your nose and farting. Well, you know, you and me, Matt, both of you, more than anything.
We don't get an I love you in there at all. She said, and she kind of holds on that. And it's really interesting. You just cannot get it out. And the fact that Jim can't even say, I know, out loud. He can only whisper. So emotional. So powerful, you know. But, of course, you know, these are real, this kind of emotional beating heart of the show, these scenes between Jim and Denise. I mean, you know, we'll get to the Christmas special as well, which is just phenomenal. But it's like, this is just, it's so tender. And it's over very quickly. You know, they don't kind of have it as this big kind of, you know, double header or anything like that. It's just her saying, you know, despite everything, I really love you and you're my dad. And like, you know, this is so important to me and it means so much to me. And it just, you know, never fails. Really does never fail for me. But of course, it's Jim. So he has to bring it down to earth, be slightly earthier, kit, etc.
I hope my arsehole's up.
And with that, he's gone. We're just with Denise now. And Denise takes her time here, symbolically snuffing out a tall cigarette for the last time into the tray, as a Royle at least, snatches a tissue. She gets up, looks around the room briefly, and leaves. And with a slam, they're gone. But we don't go straight into Half the World Away on said slam. Rather, we linger for a moment to observe the room. the tissues on the table along with the ashtrays and the mugs beside the whiskey bottle which is still left open, the tired sofas and the ornaments, the overall slightly stale pallor which we've all grown to love over these 6 episodes in this first series. It feels like we're in a liminal space. There's something quite ethereal to it about me, and I love that we get this shot to contemplate on all that's about to happen before the credits start to roll. Alright, and that brings us to the end of the first series of the show on this podcast, and the last thing that I wanted to do was just go back to the script book itself, which, again, is just a brilliant read. I find myself just leafing through it of a night as well, and it's just, you know, they are like perfect little one-act plays, as they were. So one of the things that they do in the back of the book, which is really interesting, is they publish contemporaneous reviews at the time. So what the critics were saying when these episodes were coming out. And there's quite a lot of them here. But I just want to read a few choice quotes that I found quite interesting. So this first one comes from Brian Viner, who's writing for the Mail on Sunday. This is from the 20th of September, 1998. It is said that the American sitcom Seinfeld is about nothing, yet it is of labyrinthian complexity alongside the Royle family. The story, such as it is, has hairdresser Denise Royle, I mean that's clearly wrong, but still, preparing to marry mobile disco owner Dave Best. Ahern and Cash, who also wrote The Royle Family, with their regular collaborator Henry Normal, are better known as Mrs. Merton and her son Malcolm. Maybe I have to do an episode on that as well. Similarly, Ricky Tomlinson and Sue Johnston, who played Denise's parents Jim and Barbara, were once united as Brookside's Bobby and Sheila Grant. This goes some way to explain why they all act as if they've known each other for years. They have. Although newcomer Ralph Little is just as natural as Denise's put upon younger brother Anthony. With a lesser cast, the Royle family might not have worked. As it is, it works triumphantly. It is unfair to single anyone out for a particular play. It is unfair to signal anyone out for particular praise, although I should say that Tomlinson does nothing to change my opinion, expressed before in this column, that he is our finest screen actor and a national treasure. He'd have been knighted by now if he looked and sounded more like a matinee idol and less like a garden gnome from Bootle. In fact, I'll go further and say that Tomlinson is twice the actor Kenneth Branagh is. And this is from The Telegraph, 21st of September 98. Another deliciously observed slice of life from Carolyn Ahern and friends. Yet again, the subject under discussion over a gourmet supper of pork chops, chips, beans and tea is Denise's approaching wedding. This is obviously the second episode. With Jim grumbling about having to foot the entire bill because the groom's father had been on disability benefit for 12 years. But he's got a bone disease, exclaims Denise. Yeah, and it's called bone idleness, retorts Jim. Brilliant. And also in the back of this book, in the final page, is the acknowledgements. So these being from Craig Cash, Carolyn Ahern and Henry Normal. So they thank the brilliant cast and crew. Maybe need to research some of these names. But there's also like just some extra thanks in the back as well. BBC Two, Kathy Burke, who you may be aware was originally supposed to play Cheryl, but I think the Jessica Stevenson casting was spot on there. Granada Television, Jimmy McGovern, the acclaimed Northern writer as well. Matt Squire, Brian Viner that we just mentioned as well, and all at Creation Records, which I guess is a thanks for allowing them to have Half the World Away by Oasis. So yeah guys, that is the end of our episode on the wedding. As always, please email the show, theroyleramblepod@gmail.com. Get in touch with me at theroyleramblepod. Get in touch with me at Royle Ramble Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube. Go on Spotify. Leave us an iTunes review as well, please. Those are really greatly appreciated. 5-star would be lovely. But yeah, guys, until next time, which is the first episode of the second season, this has been Tom, the Royle Ramble. Bye.